So for my latest video on my Toyota Tacoma, I'm going to focus on performance tuning provided by Overland Tailor Tuning. And what's really cool about this is, unlike the pedal commander or some other forms of modifying the accelerator pedal, this actually provides a horsepower increase on top of the accelerator pedal benefits that all of you Toyota Tacoma owners know about. You push on the accelerator, nothing happens. You push on it a little bit more, still you're not getting the acceleration you want, and then you almost floor the accelerator, and then the truck drops 2 gears and takes off. It's kind of a frustrating experience. It's anything but a linear throttle pedal. And so I wanted to both solve that issue, the throttle responsiveness, and take care of a little bit of horsepower, especially after doing that MagnaFlow exhaust. So with that said, I thought I'd get into a little bit of a summary on the power benefits. And so in the tune, it emphasizes that both power and torque are emphasized in the low to mid range where it's needed most in the 3.5 liter V6 that's in this Tacoma. Some attention was also given to the top end as well. Of course, with any tune, you're going to get the most power benefits if you use 91 octane or what's ever available in your area, and the tuning will adjust on the fly. So if you lower your octane in the vehicle for whatever reason, the tune will adjust to that lower octane fuel, and then if you raise it, of course, the tune will adjust to that as well. So I think that kind of on the fly flexibility is really cool about that. So bravo to Overland Tailor Tuning to do that. Most important for me was the shifting was improved. So there's custom shift logic both with the upshift and the downshift points. I mostly noticed that the torque converter now freely locks and unlocks, and so basically you give it a little bit of accelerator and you can hear that torque converter unlock, and then you can get going and accelerate. If you really need to get going, you can push the throttle down a little bit more. Like I said, that linear throttle is like available now. I don't even really know what to describe it other than before I thought the accelerator felt like there was a Nerf ball underneath it, and so you'd press on it. And it's not that the accelerator is hard in the Tacoma, it's just that it really doesn't do anything. You give it a little bit of throttle, it does nothing. You give it a little bit more, it does nothing. And then you give it like quite a bit more, and then the truck drops 2 gears, and you're like, I just wanted to accelerate a little bit. So anyhow, back to the improvements. So yeah, the shift points are matched to place the RPM in the best location for the torque curve, so they paid special attention to that. They reworked the VVTi valving adjustment in the engine, so the adjustable cam system was tweaked for the best low to mid power range while putting attention towards fuel economy and emissions. They do offer custom gearing for larger tires or tweaks like that. If you've got something more aggressive than what we're running for wheels and tires here, mine's pretty close to stock, so I didn't think that was necessary. They do have a tow and haul lockout mode, so they can go ahead and gear lock the truck if that's important to you. I didn't think that that was really important for me, so I opted to have the ECT button, the power button in the truck, give me 2 flavors of accelerator. One they call spicy, and it's super aggressive throttle. And honestly, I forget what the first one is. I'll add that in the video after the fact. But this is the option that I have, is the sport mode can switch to the next aggressive map. So when I'm not in sport mode, it's just the regular map that I picked, and then when I push sport mode, then I get the spicy, most aggressive throttle pedal. So then with all that said, I got into some questions with one of the owners of Overland Tailor, and I just asked, I said, why do you think Toyota tuned the ECU on the truck the way they did? And so he said, they know many times that Toyota make this map for the average person who doesn't even really notice. And I would tend to agree with that. Maybe us in the aftermarket or enthusiasts just, hey, kind of love tweaking our stuff and we expect a little bit more snappiness. I come from performance cars where, add turbocharging or supercharging, and I've had more performance-oriented cars than this truck before. And so this accelerator, like I said, is anything but linear. So I don't know. I've driven plenty of trucks in my life. This by far has got like the worst throttle response I've ever experienced. So yeah, I think it's a good point that they made, but yeah, anyhow, I think the tuning totally fixes this truck, by the way. So on to my second question is, can you tell me what's going to add that linear feeling back to the accelerator? The short answer they gave me was no, they can't really tell me why their tuning adds that throttle linearity, if that's even a word, back to the truck. Their methods of doing that are proprietary, and I get that. There's plenty of competition out there, so I can understand why they wouldn't get into that explanation. So yeah, then I kind of pressed a little further, like what's actually done in the transmission tuning. So I explained, the situation I just told you about, where you push, you get nothing, you push a little bit more on the accelerator, you get nothing, and then you push a lot more, and then the truck gets going. And so the feedback from Overland Tailor Tuning was that they unlocked the converter. And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted it to unlock the converter first and then hold the gear longer until you call for more accelerator. And then once you give it more accelerator, then it'll drop a gear. I'll get into a driving video that shows what the truck was like before and then what it looks like after the tune. But they explain it looks like the truck is gear hunting on the tune, but it's not. It's just trying to find the right gear to meet the demand that I'm sending it. So I thought that was cool. Getting into mile per gallon differences, there really aren't or won't be any MPG differences with the tune. Of course, it will drop if you are more aggressive on the throttle, but miles per gallon will be less if you're off the throttle. And so people that have said like, oh, my miles per gallon really have improved with the tune, it's kind of silly. We're not doing anything to the drivetrain to lighten up parts. We're not doing anything with forced induction that would lead to better miles per gallon by recovering some pumping losses in the engine. And I'm not an engineer. I can't explain those things in detail, but I do know like the basic mechanics of an engine and how it works. And to hear from the tuner himself saying, hey, you're not going to see a difference here after the tune with miles per gallon unless you change your driving habits. And so I just wanted to get that out of the way. I typically will see like 17 to 19 around town, sometimes 20 if I'm really driving like at the speed limit or around the speed limit. But anytime you're going to go over 75 miles an hour, you're going to watch the miles per gallon plummet in these trucks, especially with these off-road wheels and tires. I don't have a very aggressive setup. I think my tires are close to 32 inches, which is not that big in the off-road community. And I can only imagine it would get worse. I have a friend that's got a Tacoma Sport with the air dam and some narrower tires, and they get close to 22 to 24 miles per gallon. So obviously the tires are going to make the biggest difference in this truck. But anyhow, kind of jumping out of that rabbit hole for a moment, I asked the final question of what's your take on the skeptical enthusiast who isn't sure which tune to try. So their advice was, hey, do your research, ask questions, try different tunes, look at the company and look at the reviews, look for independent dyno reviews. They're rare. That's why I went through the trouble of trying to independently dyno test it myself. So yeah, here we are. That's kind of the summary from Overland Tailor Tuning. I've been very pleased with their level of customer service, and I certainly like the way the truck drives after the fact. So with all that said, I'll just get into what we did end up doing for dyno testing. Is that Overland Tailor Tuning by themselves have gone to SEMA, yes, like the same SEMA as the SEMA show, and gone ahead and gotten an independent dyno test from them. And so it's that independent test that they obtained that I'm using in this article and this video for you. So the data that you see wasn't obtained necessarily from Overland Tailor Tuning, but it was the test results from SEMA that they got to get some in the future testing certification that they want to do for their business. Okay, so explaining the SEMA testing. In order to obtain the SEMA certification, their test was performed running the stock 2023 Tacoma, and then they installed the Overland Tailor Tune, running both of those versions on their 48-inch SVL two-wheel chassis dyno. These tests were performed on 87 octane. Overland Tailor Tune did this test independently to achieve 49 state emissions approval and movement into the CARB certification process. So there you go. Yeah, let's take a look at the results.
Looking at the dyno run from the SEMA results, we can see a healthy gain in both horsepower and torque. On 87 octane, the Overland Tailor Tune achieves 7.7 more horsepower and 9.3 foot-pounds of torque. It should be noted that the dips in power in the low RPM range here can't be explained because no data logging equipment could be hooked up to the truck during SEMA testing. It could be anything from the limitations of running 87 octane fuel to any number of unknown factors. Conversely, Overland Tailor Tune conducted their own dyno run on 91 octane with data logging, and they measured a peak increase of 3.84 horsepower and 5.74 foot-pounds of torque. But the bigger story is all the additional power under the curve, as some gaps between the power bands look like over 8 horsepower and 10 foot-pounds more. So the throttle pedal in the Toyota Tacoma is anything but linear. I'm not sure why they did that, if it was an emissions thing or a fuel economy thing, just trying to get the truck to shift into the highest gear possible. But as you put your foot down on the accelerator, you get this big dead space before it finally decides to shift down 2 gears and finally get the truck going. The only thing that owners can do is hit the little ECT power button that's down here, which ends up turning the light on the dash, but I think it's more for a tow haul mode. And what that does is it gives you more of that linear throttle that you're expecting. In other words, when you push the throttle down about a quarter of the way, it feels like the truck is accelerating as you would expect it, versus with the ECT power button off, when you accelerate and you put the throttle down about a quarter, it feels about the same as it does when you have the throttle down like an eighth of the way. And like I said before, there's just this huge dead throttle space in the accelerator where you're pushing your foot down more and the truck isn't really accelerating. So it is like a big complaint amongst Tacoma owners. There are people that say there's technical service bulletins that Toyota has that will update the transmission shift logic and fix that. But my experience at the Toyota dealer close to me is that they're unaware of any such bulletin existing. So here we are getting on an on-ramp, and I'm pushing down on the throttle, and I keep pushing, and then finally I get the acceleration that I'm expecting. But with the ECT power button on, I push the throttle down a little bit more, the truck accelerates a little bit more. So one of the first things I do when I get in the truck is I just go ahead and push the ECT power button just so I can have that linear throttle. It just gets rid of that feeling like I've got a Nerf football stuck underneath the accelerator. The silly thing about that shift logic the way it is that shifting you into the highest gear possible is great in theory, but it doesn't end up saving you gas mileage because you've got to end up putting the throttle down so much further just to get it going like you would expect it to. So I end up getting worse mileage when I don't have the power button on versus when I do have the power button on. And the savings would really be just let your foot off the throttle if you don't want to use as much fuel as you're driving along. It's kind of simple. I don't know why Toyota screwed that up so bad, but they did. So we're going to go to the aftermarket to see if we can get better throttle response, better transmission shifting, and a little bit more horsepower. Okay, so I wanted to just shoot a after video on what it's like driving the truck after having the Overland Tailor Tune installed. I think the best way is to just sort of show and talk while it's going. Otherwise, it's just a guy driving his truck around. So if you watched the earlier part of the video where I had the stock tune on the Tacoma, you could see I pushed down on the throttle a lot and not a lot would happen. And then eventually the truck would kick down a gear, sometimes two, and it was just too much. So I'm just driving around the neighborhood now, trying to obey the speed limit, and I think you can see, like here, I'll just go down the street and give it a little bit of throttle input, and I go a little bit. It's exactly what you'd think you should get, but you don't from the stock tune. So push down a little bit more, and you get a little bit more. So yeah, it's really nice. I really like the way the truck drives now. So I'm going to pull out onto a main street and I'll get up to speed on that street, and then you can hear the torque converter lock and unlock, and that's the other part. So as you're driving the torque converter, you're driving at speed, you want a little bit of throttle, the torque converter unlocks, you get up to speed, and it works just like you expect. And then after you're done accelerating, the torque converter will lock back up again. So yeah, here I am just cruising. I want a little bit more power. Hear the torque converter unlock, get up to speed, and then it locks up again. So it's really great. I'll get out onto this next street here and give you a little bit more throttle input, and then you'll hear it kick down a gear. So now I'm just driving at like 35 miles an hour. Give it a little bit of throttle. There's the torque converter. Give it a little bit more. There's the gear drop, like I was talking about. So that wraps up what I had for the video. It's not only long in length, but it took a while to film this video for various reasons. So anyone that's in the market for getting the Overland Tailor Tune, hopefully this gives you a better idea of what it's like after the tune is installed, and all the reasons leading up to why I wanted to install the tune, and if you own a Tacoma, why it may be an advantage to get the tune installed on your vehicle. So yeah, thanks for watching the video.